Snuck in a major third at the end there. There we go. Hey everyone, Neil here. So I thought I'd just do a follow-up video on my channel for those of you that are bored enough to want to listen to it. Deep diving a little bit about this preset that I've come up with for the AM4. It's based on the Deluxe Reverb normal model, which is a Fender, Reverb Deluxe. I actually Deluxe Reverb. I keep getting these wrong. I had one of these a long time ago. Slipped through my fingers. Still keeps me up at night. I don't know if you've all got one of those amps that you're like, why did I sell that? Anyway, long time ago. The point is, I've got a very strong reference for how that amplifier sounded, and Fractal being the amazing product that it is, line of products, the Fractal sound and the way that you can operate them. It's just this big, broad, open palette that lets you color those tones and rebuild times gone and bring them back to life. So that's what I've kind of set out to do here, I guess. I'll just go through, before I do anything, let me just play through the four different scenes that I've come up with. Each one is based on the same amp. I've put each amp on a different channel because I like to, with scene two, I'll mess with the amp, but I won't want it to affect the scene, the first scene. So yeah, as I go through scenes 1, 2, 3 and 4, it'll be amp channel A, B, C and D, but each of them will be the same model, the same channel, the Deluxe Verb normal. The only caveat to that is that I'm using an IR that I purchased, and I'll give you a link to that in the description if you want to look at it. I'll talk more about that IR and specifically why I chose it and why it's one of my go-tos over, something like the Dynacabs, which are equally brilliant, but just, creature of habit. There are certain IRs that I just gravitate towards and like, so I go back to them a lot. So yeah, the first sound you heard there was this is my Sire T7 FM, very modestly priced guitar with appointments well above some of the guitars I have that are double the value or the price, and big name companies as well, some of which are in a great deal of trouble at the minute, or murky waters I should say. But yeah, this is incredibly versatile. It's actually 2 humbuckers, but there's been loads of thought that's gone into not just the way these are wound. I'd say they're vintage, maybe slightly vintage hot, but they're very much a vintage sounding pickup, which I love. But the split sounds are great. So you're listening to that sound, which is very articulate and dynamic and responsive. That is the split sound. If I go to the neck humbucker, still beautiful. I mean, just sweet, and absolutely love it. There's no muddiness there. It's a really nice set of pickups in this thing. But as I said, the difference between that humbuck sound and the split sound, just yeah, like I said, it's chameleon. This guitar will do a load of different sounds. But yeah, that's my kind of bass clean setting. There's a bunch going on outside of just the IR and selecting the model. We'll go into that. Let's just move on quickly to the other sounds, so you have them as reference points. The second sound is same amp. There's a few EQ tweaks, amp EQ tweaks, not an actual parametric or GEQ. And then this, I've got a tube screamer in the front, driving the front, quite hard, but again sounds very sweet. So that's on the split coil sound. Neck humbucker. I think that's really inoffensive and quite a nice sort of mid-focus lead. That'd cut well cut through well live, I think. um, and not too aggressive either. So that is it's doing what Tube Screamer should do in front of a Fender, and in front of a lot of amps. It's pushing the mids and just kind of just curving the rolling back on the top and the bottom. But yeah, I really like that sound. So again, there are other tweaks in there, but that gives you a rough idea. Same model. The raw drive. Now this sound is kind of homing in on that woofy low end Fender flub, but like the sound that I really love, almost where it's breaking in, you know, Fenders kind of break into fuzz a little bit if you push them in the right places. Especially on this, like on the neck pickup, if I use the neck humbucker, you can really hear it. I adore that sound. I just love that kind of low growl that you get, that are just so characteristic of Fenders. I mean, Fender clean sounds, they're yeah, as many of these amps are, a subject of great debate, but they're generally speaking that clean Fender sound. It's quite a scoop sound. They're not mid forward at all, unless you absolutely crank the life out of them and make everyone's ears bleed. At which point, then yes, the mids certainly do come to life, but it's not often you get the chance to do that. But I actually quite like, and you can recreate that, you know, saturating the master volume on this amp, or going in to look at saturation on the expert edit. You can very much reproduce that, but I quite like that, the cleaner, more articulate sound that you get from a Fender when it's not absolutely dimed like that. But then I've made little tweaks to kind of push the mid forward and warm it up a bit, which I think has translated quite well. But yeah, we'll go back to that. The last sound is sound 4. This seam 4. This is the smoother drive. So this is sorry, the raw drive, by the way, that was also an 808, but it was the 808 mod. And yeah, that was really pushing hard and getting that flub to come out. Scene 4, this one, smoother drive. This is a little bit of the top off, back to the 808, but much less of it. And I guess it's just, again, it's that sort of just into edge of breakup sound. Yeah, it's on the split sound there. If I go to the non-split, it's nice. I like that. But again, it's a little bit more. It's dynamic because if you're gentle with it, it's not too gainy or not breaking up too much. But if you dig in, it's starting to quack and starting to bark a little bit, which is great. So yeah, there you go. That's the kind of 2 sounds that are in there. Sorry, the 4 sounds that are in there. It's a nice sort of tonal variety and sort of typically kind of Fendery sounding tones. So from here, I think I can probably now go a little bit further into things. So if we go back to the Innocent Clean, the one that is probably the cleanest of the bunch. Lovely finger picked as well. Really just so lifelike for me. If I add in my delay to this, so this is also my kind of go-to delay setup. I can talk a little bit about the delay if that interests you. But what I'm doing here with this delay, so dual delay, I have the modulation on because I haven't got any room left for a chorus block, and I know we have some limitations on the AM4, but this is one way to get that kind of chorus effect back in, is to dial the modulation in. And a lot of these you can dial modulation in, but with a a fairly slow rate, you end up with this quite nice sort of bloom into chorus as those delays start interacting with each other. So if you've got your, I hope you've got your headphones on so you can hear the full effect of this. So there's a couple of things going on there. Obviously, you've got that kind of, you've got the impact of the chord, and then it sort of blooms into this beautiful chorus. But also, the delays kind of don't get in the way too much until the chord starts to decay a bit, and that's because I'm using ducking. Let me go to my config page, because I like big lush delays, but I don't want them to clutter my playing. So that's why. But you get such a nice result out of that by just adding that chorus as almost like a ducked chorus, if you like. Yeah, very, very sweet. It's almost a little bit like Eric Johnson circa mid-90s kind of vibe to it, isn't it? I can't remember the tune. That one. Yeah, that's it. I'm remembering it now. There you go. So yeah, it's got that kind of, especially with these the position 2 on this, which is really, really quacky. You can bring out those tones too. So there's quite a lot of versatility with this amplifier. I mean, if you think about the sort of stark difference between that tone and then the sort of much more mid-focus, that's almost completely different sounds. There's quite a lot going on within here. Let's just quickly talk about what I'm doing in the amp, because I think that's probably, and again, these are things that I'm dialing to taste. In the amplifier, those are the settings of the actual amp. There's not a lot to change on a Deluxe Reverb. Gain, bass and treble. The gain's not high at all. And then if we go into the expert edit, where are we? In the preamp tab. So I have the boost switch on, and the boost type is neutral, and it really is very neutral. It just adds a little bit more. More is more, says Mr. Malmsteen. There's just a little bit more in the middles. It's just coming to life a little bit. So yeah, only 1.53 dB, just a little nudge. I've also got the saturation switch on. On the saturation drive is 1.208. Really, Fractal? 3 decimal places? Can anyone hear the difference to 3 decimal places? I love Fractal for that. They're such detail guys. I can tell the difference between 1.208 and 1.209. Yeah, that's why we need 3 decimal places. Okay, that's it in the preamp. If we go to the power amp, there's depth. I've added a little bit of depth to this, 1.12. So yeah, I'm just looking at warming up and pushing lower mids and just trying to get a bit more, getting that very kind of Fendery scoop sound to be a little bit more mid forward. Another big one for me, and this goes for just about every preset I ever do, not just on Fractal, across all modelers, is the room kind of thing. It's built into the Fractal cabinet block here, which is brilliant, because on other modelers, this is something I've done for decades, is stick a reverb straight after the cabinet block, like a very short room reverb, just to give it a little bit of presence, make it feel like it's there with you, and sort of pull it into a little bit of a stereo. It gives a stereo image, which is how you listen to a real amp, regardless of whether it's a one-speakered mono amp. I remember this argument with someone once actually, where they said, "Why do you do things in stereo? What's the point?" Because I live on in-ears. I mean, that's one of the reasons, but they're like, why don't you just take a mono signal? I was like, have you ever listened to a mono guitar signal? You'll soon realize it's incredibly unpleasant. If you take the signal from a guitar speaker, say off of one mic, and play that exact sound into both ears, it's not nice. And very isolating if you're on in-ears, and it's one of the reasons why a lot of musicians don't like in-ears, and they take time to get used to. You know, I've had a now 25-year career on IEMs, so I'm very accustomed to them. But I will say, on top of that, I also have really good hearing for my age, and that is largely down to the fact that my ears are very well protected, mainly from some incredibly loud drummers that I've worked with over the years. Um, but yeah, the room thing. Yeah, so sorry, just to finish that, what I was saying was that conversation I was having with someone about the kind of the mono thing. I was like, yeah, if a guitar little combo single 112 speaker amp is in the room with you, and you're like, yeah, this is mono. It's not mono. You're not hearing it in mono. You're very much hearing a stereo image of that one sound source, because its reflection to the left wall might be different to the right wall, which is further away, and those are arriving at your ears at different times, as they are to the ceiling, as they are to the floor and the back wall. And all of those things will present a stereo image of that sound to you, and that's how you can close your eyes and go, I'm sat here in a small studio and I'm not in a cathedral. You can do that without the luxury of sight, because you have a wonderful stereo image of information coming into both of your ears. So it's very important for me to reproduce that feeling on a set of in-ears, and one of the easiest ways to do that, as Fractal has beautifully implemented it here, and it's more purposeful on the Fractal than just sticking a reverb block in front after the amp, is this room section in the cabinet tab. I use between 10 and 15%, and that tends to give me a really nice a nice feel. And in fact, as I said, if you've got your headphones on, I can kind of show you this. Let me just turn off the delay and the reverb and come back to the amp block, and I shall show you. So at the minute, so there's that's kind of the dry sound, right? If I take that room out completely, so we're at 10%, let's remove it. So I'm just going to put 10 in, but I'm not going to press enter. Let me just do that a bit more. Enter, now it's on. So hopefully you can hear the vast difference of suddenly it feeling like it's in a small space. It's just so important. And I set the room shape to Hall. So again, if I go to the room, you still have the effect. But if I go to Hall, it like does this. It just opens out slightly. So I quite like the Hall setting. 10% is great. I will usually go between 10 and 15% and see which feels the best. And it's a feel thing. Air's also very good, by the way, the other option down there. But that's more like a sort of attenuation of the higher frequency, sort of smooths things out a bit. But I didn't feel like I needed to mess with the top end of the sound of this Fender. It just sounded great the way it was, so I didn't mess with it there. But those are kind of the main little tweaks. If we go back to the cab now, because that was the other thing I wanted to talk about. The by far the most important thing I think, is to make sure that you effectively use your low and high cuts, or in other modelers they're referred to as low and high passes, although you have to think in reverse, because a high pass is a low cut and vice versa. It's the wrong way around. That's why it's much easier for us guitarists, because most of us are simple creatures. I certainly am. That the Fractal just called it a low cut. You're cutting the low. Like, just keep it simple. Keep it simple, stupid, as they say. So I tend to work. I mean, I'm always working back to the frequency response of the paper cone that is in a guitar speaker. You don't have tweeters in them. You don't have these massively wild high ranges. So, you know, that's probably one of that can really be the missing thing. If you've got a sound and you find, like, I'm trying to dial something weird in the top end, it's like a nasty glass soup, you know, you get a good glassy sound and a bad glassy sound. That kind of really piercing top noise that you can't get rid of. Half the time it's because you haven't put your high cut in the right place. And as most guitar speakers, most of the nice ones that I like to play through, yeah, you tend to find those frequency responses are right down that they could be like 6.5, even down to 5 with some, for 1,000 I'm talking about. This particular one, I'm at the very top of where I'd ever go, just to kind of keep that super brittle sound, but nothing beyond. So I'm at 6,900 hertz there. I might bring that back a little bit, but I usually live around 6.5 to 7,000 hertz on the high cut. The low cut, again, I usually live between 85 and 110. A few of my friends that are on the circuit with me that use modelers as well, a few of them says to me 110 is taking quite a bit out there. For me, it's totally subjective to the amplifier. But with Fenders, because they can get quite flubby in the bottom, that is where you kill that delay. That is where I find, because I can still hear that's got that Fendery boom, but 110 on the master cut, I'm just allowing the kind of the articulation of the note to come forward a little bit more, because you start losing note definition if it gets too flubby. If that's the sound you want, great. But if you want some detail, especially if you're like hanging around near the neck positions, which I do a lot, this still maintains some clarity. On a different amp, I might back that to 85 hertz and let more of the bass through, but on this particular Fender, I find 110 is a pretty nice place to be. It just feels like there's no definition there, and it's still got the bottom in. Yeah, I like that. That's how that's generally how I dial the low cuts. But yeah, do that. Obviously, if you're running on your amp, if you're running if you're blending two cabs, then you've also got separate low and high cuts per cab, or really per microphone, because if you're blending, say, a 57 with a Royer or a 57 with a ribbon, there are frequencies that you might not want out of. Let's say the ribbon might be just entirely too boomy, so you can literally pull the bottom out of the ribbon and say that's all I want to present forward of that microphone. And yeah, that's why you have the cuts per cabinet and per microphone, and then your master cuts is then taking that whole sound and just shaping it the way you want it. So yeah, that's kind of it, really. So that's the amp. We've talked about delay. The reverb, just pick any reverb you like, dial to taste. All the Fractal reverbs are just gorgeous. I think I'm just using am I using the Hall, or let's have a look. Hall chorus. Okay, yeah. I don't even think I dialed the chorus in on that reverb. Maybe it is there, but it's very subtle if it is. But yeah, my delay's obviously doing most of the chorus work. And then the compressor, just to quickly talk about that. So I'm using the VCA modern compressor, which is very much that kind. Like I said, this is kind of a this is kind of more of a produced sound, I guess. It's very pretty. I'm not sure I'd, like I said, I'm not sure I'd use that live as is. I'd make some tweaks, but for that real nice produced sound, the VCA Modern compressor is really good. Um, yeah, I'd maybe pick a different compressor for live stuff, but that sounds great. So, and I don't think I've tweaked that much. I maybe had to touch the threshold, tweak that a little bit, or I think the rest of it's pretty much stock. So nothing exceptional there at all. Those are basically the sounds. So if there's anything more you want to know about it, and if you've hung around this long, thank you very much for listening to me ramble. Um, and yeah, I'll be doing this again soon on the next one I'm working on, which is the 800. So I've got the JCM 800, another amp I know really well that I actually think, again, I think it's a lot more versatile amp than people give it credit for. It gets pigeonholed as that 80s rock sound, which of course it does very well. But for me, in my head, the 800 is the definitive Marshall sound, if you like Marshalls. And I think I've tried to achieve that sound out of other Marshalls and never quite got it. So there's a lovely suite of 800s in here to play with on the Fractal. So I've just started messing around with those, but I'm pretty happy with the results. So watch this space. We're going to be looking at that one next. Okay, any other questions, comments? Just drop them in the usual place, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.